The rain battered the windows of the old pickup truck, each drop a hammer blow against Emma's heart as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Her father's voice still echoed in her ears. "You're no daughter of mine. Get out and don't come back." At 18, Emma had been cast out of her home in Willow Creek, Tennessee, for daring to love a girl, her world collapsing in a single night. Now, 10 years later, she was back, the truck's tires crunching on the gravel road leading into the town she swore she'd never see again. The air smelled of wet earth and nostalgia, a cruel mix that churned her stomach. She wasn't here for reconciliation. Her father had made his stance clear, but for Lily, the woman who had become her home when she had none. Emma glanced at the passenger seat, where Lily sat, her blonde hair catching the faint glow of the dashboard. At 26, Lily was a beacon of warmth, her hazel eyes bright even in the dim light, but now they were clouded with worry. "You sure about this, Em?" Lily asked, her voice soft but steady. "This town, it's not exactly welcoming." Emma forced a smile, though her chest tightened. "We're not here to win their hearts, Lil. We're here to save my sister." Her younger sister Sarah had called 2 weeks ago, her voice trembling through the phone. Their father was sick, cancer, aggressive, and Sarah, only 22, was drowning in medical bills and the weight of caring for him alone. Emma had wanted to say no, to let the man who disowned her face his consequences, but Sarah's plea had cracked something open inside her. Willow Creek hadn't changed much. The same faded welcome sign stood at the town's edge, proclaiming home of faith and family. Emma snorted. Faith had been her father's weapon, wielded to justify kicking her out when she came out as lesbian. Family, that was a word he'd stripped from her the night he threw her suitcase into the rain-soaked yard. As they pulled into the motel on the outskirts of town, the neon sign flickered, casting a sickly glow over the parking lot. Emma parked and killed the engine, the silence heavy between them. Lily reached for her hand, her touch grounding. "Whatever happens, we're in this together," she said, her voice a quiet vow. Emma nodded, but the weight of returning to a place that had rejected her felt like a storm brewing inside her. The next morning they drove to Sarah's house, a modest 2-story home on Maple Street, its paint peeling like old memories. Sarah answered the door, her face pale and eyes red-rimmed. She threw her arms around Emma, sobbing. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. Emma held her tightly, guilt gnawing at her for all the years she'd stayed away. "He's upstairs," Sarah said, leading them inside. The house smelled of antiseptic and regret. Emma's father, Robert, lay in a hospital bed in the living room, a shadow of the towering man who'd once loomed over her life. His eyes, still sharp despite his frailty, locked onto hers. "Emma," he rasped, his voice laced with something unreadable, surprise, maybe, or resentment. "Dad," she said, her tone flat. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of her pain. Lily stood beside her, a quiet pillar of strength, her hand brushing Emma's back. Robert's gaze flickered to Lily, and his lip curled slightly, a ghost of the disgust Emma remembered all too well. Sarah broke the tension. "The hospital bills are piling up, and the insurance won't cover half of it," she said, her voice cracking. "The whole town's struggling, Em. The mill closed last year and people are barely getting by. Dad's treatment, it's breaking us." Emma's jaw tightened. Willow Creek's economic decline wasn't her problem, but Sarah's desperation was. She'd built a life in Nashville, working as a civil engineer, and she had resources, savings, connections. She could help Sarah, but it meant staying in this town longer than she'd planned, facing the ghosts of her past. That afternoon, Emma and Lily walked through downtown Willow Creek, the streets lined with shuttered storefronts and faded American flags. Whispers followed them, old neighbors, former friends, their eyes narrowing at the sight of 2 women holding hands. Emma felt the familiar sting of judgment, but Lily's grip tightened, a silent reminder. We're enough. At the diner they sat in a corner booth, the air thick with the scent of coffee and grease. A waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, approached. "You're Robert's girl, aren't you?" she asked, her tone neutral but curious. Emma nodded, bracing for a lecture, but the woman just sighed. "Heard he's real sick. Tough times around here." Emma leaned forward, her voice low. "What's going on with the town?" Sarah mentioned the mill closing. The waitress, whose name tag read Doris, glanced around before answering. "Whole place is falling apart. No jobs, no money. Folks are leaving and those who stay are barely holding on. Your dad's not the only one struggling. Emma exchanged a glance with Lily. This was bigger than her father's illness. Willow Creek was dying, and despite everything, Emma felt a tug of responsibility. She'd been cast out, but this was still the place where she'd learned to ride a bike, where she'd kissed her first girlfriend under the willow tree by the creek. Could she walk away from it now? That night at the motel, Emma sat on the edge of the bed staring at her hands. Lily knelt in front of her, cupping her face. "You don't owe them anything, Em," she said softly. "Not your dad, not this town. But I know you, and I know you're already thinking about how to fix this." Emma's eyes burned with unshed tears. "I hate this place," she whispered. "But Sarah, and maybe, just maybe, I can make a difference." Lily kissed her forehead, her lips warm and steady. "Then we'll do it together," she said, and in that moment, Emma felt the first spark of hope since she'd crossed the town line. The next day, Emma visited the town hall, digging into public records and talking to the mayor, a gruff man named Tom who remembered her from high school. "You're back to stir up trouble?" he asked, half joking. Emma didn't smile. "I'm here to help my sister. And maybe this town if it'll let me." She spent hours poring over budget reports and economic data, her engineer's mind kicking into gear. The mill's closure had gutted the local economy, but there was potential land for renewable energy, grants for small businesses, federal programs she'd worked with in Nashville. She could bring those resources here, but it would mean confronting the town's prejudices head-on. As she left the town hall, a group of men stood outside, their voices low but hostile. "Heard you're back, Emma," one said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Still causing problems?" Emma's heart pounded, but she straightened, meeting his gaze. "I'm here to help. You can take it or leave it." Lily was waiting in the truck, her expression fierce. "You okay?" she asked as Emma climbed in. Emma nodded, but her hands shook. This town had broken her once. She wouldn't let it happen again. But as they drove back to the motel, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that saving Willow Creek would mean facing more than just her father's rejection. It would mean rewriting her own story, and maybe, just maybe, finding redemption in the place that had cast her out. Emma woke to the sound of Lily humming softly, the morning light filtering through the motel's thin curtains. It was a small comfort, a reminder of the life they'd built together in Nashville, a life where they could walk down the street hand in hand without fear of whispers or worse. But here in Willow Creek, every step felt like a battle, and today Emma was gearing up for war. She'd spent the previous night sketching out a plan to revive the town's economy, her laptop glowing with spreadsheets and grant applications. Renewable energy was the key. Solar panels on the old mill site could create jobs and attract investment. She'd seen it work in other struggling towns, but Willow Creek's resistance to change, and to her, would make it an uphill climb. At breakfast in the diner, Doris slid a plate of pancakes in front of them, her eyes lingering on Emma. "Heard you were at the town hall yesterday," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Folks are talking. Some say you're trying to save us. Others say you're just here to show off." Emma's fork paused midair. "I'm here for my sister," she said, her voice steady. "If the town benefits, that's a bonus." Doris nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes before she walked away. Lily squeezed Emma's knee under the table. "You're doing more than they deserve," she whispered. Emma didn't argue, but the weight of her plan pressed heavier on her shoulders. Sarah joined them later, her face drawn but hopeful. "Dad's stable for now," she said, stirring her coffee. "But the bills? I don't know how we're going to pay them." Emma reached across the table, covering Sarah's hand with her own. "I'm working on something. Not just for Dad, but for everyone here. Trust me." That afternoon, Emma presented her proposal at a town meeting, standing in the high school gymnasium where she'd once played basketball. The crowd was a mix of skeptical faces: farmers, shop owners, and churchgoers, many of whom had known her as a kid. Mayor Tom introduced her, his tone cautious. "Emma's got some ideas about the town's future. Let's hear her out." Emma took a deep breath, her notes clutched tightly. "Willow Creek is dying," she began, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "The mill's gone and so are the jobs. But there's a way forward: solar energy. The old mill site is perfect for a solar farm. It'll bring jobs, revenue, and stability. I've got contacts in Nashville who can help secure grants, investors, the works." The room erupted in whispers. A man in the back, his face weathered and red, stood up. "You think you can waltz back here after all these years and tell us how to live? We don't need your fancy ideas, girl." Emma's stomach twisted, but she held her ground. "I'm not here to tell you how to live. I'm here to give you a chance to survive." Another voice piped up, softer but sharper. "What's in it for you, Emma? You left us. Why should we trust you?" It was Mrs. Carter, her old English teacher, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Emma felt Lily's presence behind her, a silent anchor. "I'm not doing this for me," Emma said, her voice raw. "I'm doing it for my sister, for your kids, for this town that raised me, even if it didn't always want me." The meeting ended in a tense stalemate, with some residents intrigued and others openly hostile. As Emma and Lily left, a group of teenagers lingered outside, their laughter sharp and mocking. One tossed a crumpled soda can at Emma's feet, muttering, "Freak." Lily stepped forward, her voice low and fierce. "Back off." The kids scattered, but the word lingered, a knife in Emma's chest. Back at Sarah's house, Emma sat with her father, the silence between them heavy. Robert's breathing was labored, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. "You think you can fix this town?" he finally said, his voice weak but cutting. "You couldn't even fix yourself." Emma's fists clenched. "I'm not broken, Dad. I never was." She stood, her heart pounding. "I'm here for Sarah, not you." She walked out, Lily following, her hand slipping into Emma's as they stepped into the cool evening air. "He doesn't get to define you," Lily said, her voice fierce with love. Emma nodded, but the words stung, reopening old wounds. Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into her plan, meeting with local business owners and calling her contacts in Nashville. She secured a meeting with a renewable energy firm, but the town's resistance grew louder. Flyers appeared on lampposts decrying outsiders and unnatural influences, code for Emma and Lily's relationship. At the grocery store, a woman spat at Emma's feet, muttering, "Sinner." Lily's eyes blazed, but Emma pulled her away. "They're scared," she said, though her own fear was rising. Sarah, caught in the middle, was fraying. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she confessed one night, tears streaming down her face. "Dad's getting worse, and the town. They hate you, Em. They hate what you stand for." Emma's heart ached, but she hugged her sister tightly. "Let them hate me. I'm not leaving you." The turning point came at the next town meeting, where Emma presented a detailed budget and timeline for the solar farm. She'd done her homework: job projections, environmental benefits, even a plan to retrain mill workers. A few residents nodded, but the loudest voices were still against her. "We don't need your kind here," a man shouted, his face red with anger. Emma's resolve wavered, but then Doris stood up, her voice steady. "I've lived here my whole life, and I'm tired of watching this town die. Emma's offering us a lifeline. You don't have to like her, but you'd be fools to turn this down." A ripple of agreement passed through the crowd, small but enough to give Emma hope. As she left the meeting, Lily pulled her close, whispering, "You're changing things, Em. I'm so proud of you." For the first time since arriving, Emma felt like she could breathe. But as they walked back to the truck, a rock sailed through the air, narrowly missing Lily's head. Emma spun around, her heart racing, but the street was empty, the threat hanging like a storm cloud. The rock incident shook Emma, but it also lit a fire in her. She wasn't just fighting for a solar farm anymore, she was fighting for her right to exist in Willow Creek, to prove that love, her love, wasn't something to be feared. Lily, ever her rock, spent the evening mapping out their next steps, her optimism a lifeline. "We're not backing down," she said, her hazel eyes fierce. "This town needs you, even if they don't know it yet." Emma doubled down, organizing a community forum to address concerns about the solar project. She invited experts from Nashville, engineers, economists, even a pastor who supported inclusive communities. The high school gym was packed, the air thick with tension. Emma stood at the podium, her voice steady despite the hostile stares. "This isn't about me," she said. "It's about jobs for your families, schools for your kids, a future for Willow Creek. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm asking for a chance." The pastor, a kind-eyed woman named Reverend Claire, spoke next, her words weaving a bridge between faith and progress. Love is not a sin, she said, her gaze sweeping the crowd. And neither is change. Emma's offering both. A few heads nodded, but others crossed their arms, their faces hard. Emma caught sight of her father in the back, his wheelchair pushed by Sarah, his expression unreadable. After the forum, a handful of residents approached Emma, cautious but curious. A mechanic named Joe, whose son had lost his job at the mill, asked about retraining programs. A young mother, her eyes tired, wanted to know if the solar farm would lower energy costs. For the first time, Emma felt the tide shifting, however slightly. But as she and Lily left, a group of men blocked their path, their leader a burly man named Hank. "You think you can change us?" he sneered. "This town don't want you." Lily stepped forward, her voice low and dangerous. "She's not here for you. She's here for the people who want a future." Hank's eyes narrowed, but he backed off, muttering under his breath. Emma's heart raced, but she felt a surge of pride for Lily, her partner in every sense. At Sarah's house, Emma sat with her father again, the silence between them heavier than ever. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice brittle. "You don't owe this town nothing." Emma met his gaze, her own steady. "I'm doing it because I can. Because I'm not the scared kid you threw out." For the first time she saw a flicker of something in his eyes, regret, maybe, or shame. The next week was a whirlwind. Emma secured a grant from a renewable energy fund, enough to cover the initial costs of the solar farm. She worked with Mayor Tom to draft a proposal for the town council, her days blurring into nights of emails and phone calls. Lily took on the role of liaison, charming skeptical residents with her warmth and diffusing tension with her quick wit. Slowly, more people came around. Doris rallied the diner regulars. Joe started a petition among the mill workers, and even Mrs. Carter offered to tutor kids impacted by the economic downturn. But the opposition grew uglier. Late one night, Emma and Lily returned to the motel to find their truck's tires slashed, the word "Dyke" spray-painted on the hood. Emma's hand shook as she called the police, but the officer who arrived barely hid his disdain. "Probably just kids," he said, shrugging. Lily's eyes blazed, but Emma pulled her inside, her voice low. "They want us to run. We won't." The next day, Sarah showed up at the motel, her face pale. "Dad's worse," she said. "The doctors say. Maybe a month." Emma's chest tightened, a mix of grief and anger she couldn't untangle. She went to see him, alone this time, sitting by his bed as he slept. His face, once so imposing, was now gaunt, his breathing shallow. "I don't forgive you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I'm not you. I won't hate." The town council meeting was the breaking point. Emma presented the solar farm plan backed by data, testimonials, and the grant. The vote was close 4-3 in favor. Cheers mixed with boos as the gavel fell. Emma felt a rush of relief, but it was short-lived. Outside, a crowd had gathered, Hank at the front, his voice loud and venomous. "You're tearing this town apart," he shouted. Emma stood her ground, Lily by her side. "I'm trying to save it," she said, her voice carrying over the noise. "You can help, or you can get out of the way." That night, Emma and Lily sat on the motel bed, exhausted but unbroken. "You're incredible," Lily said, her voice soft with awe. Emma smiled, pulling her close. "I couldn't do this without you." They kissed, a quiet promise in a world that felt ready to explode. As they fell asleep, Emma dreamed of a Willow Creek where love didn't mean exile, where she and Lily could walk freely, hand in hand. The solar farm project moved forward, but the victory was bittersweet. Emma woke each morning to new challenges: vandalized equipment, threatening letters slipped under the motel door, and whispers that followed her and Lily like shadows. Yet, for every act of hate, there were small acts of support. Doris brought them homemade pies, Joe organized a crew to clear the mill site, and Reverend Claire held a community prayer for unity, her words a balm to Emma's fraying nerves. Sarah was struggling, caught between her father's declining health and the town's division. "I don't know how to thank you," she told Emma one evening, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to come back." Emma hugged her tightly. "You're my family, Sarah. That's enough." But the truth was, Emma was fighting for more than Sarah now. She was fighting for the girl she'd been, the one who'd left Willow Creek in tears, and for every kid in this town who felt like they didn't belong. The solar farm's groundbreaking ceremony was a turning point. The mill site, once a symbol of loss, buzzed with activity workers, reporters from Nashville, even a few curious residents. Emma stood at the podium, her voice steady as she spoke. "This is for Willow Creek," she said. "For all of us." Lily stood beside her, her smile radiant, and for a moment Emma believed they could win. But that night disaster struck. A fire broke out at the mill site, flames licking the sky as equipment burned. Emma and Lily rushed to the scene, the air thick with smoke and chaos. Firefighters battled the blaze, but the damage was done. Half the solar panels were destroyed, and the grant money wouldn't cover replacements. The police called it an accident, but Emma saw Hank in the crowd, his smirk telling a different story. The town's reaction was mixed. Some, like Doris and Joe, offered to fundraise for repairs, but others saw the fire as a sign. "Maybe this ain't meant to be," Mrs. Carter said at the next town meeting, her voice heavy with doubt. Emma's heart sank, but she refused to give up. She spent days on the phone, securing emergency funds and rallying her Nashville contacts. Lily organized a community cleanup, her charm winning over even the skeptics. Meanwhile, Robert's health deteriorated. Emma visited him daily, their conversations short and strained. One afternoon he grabbed her hand, his grip weak but urgent. "I was wrong," he whispered, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry." Emma froze, the words she'd longed for cutting deeper than she'd expected. She nodded, unable to speak, and left the room, her heart a tangle of grief and relief. The fire's aftermath forced Emma to confront the town's deeper issues. At a community meeting, she laid it all bare. "Someone burned our future," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "But I'm not giving up. Are you?" The room was silent. Then Joe stood, his voice gruff. "I'm in." One by one, others joined: Doris, Reverend Claire, even Mrs. Carter. The tide was turning, but Emma knew the fight wasn't over. Lily was her anchor through it all. One night, as they lay in bed, Lily traced circles on Emma's palm. "You're building something bigger than a solar farm," she said. "You're giving this town a heart." Emma kissed her, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You're my heart," she whispered. And in that moment, she knew she could face anything. The next morning, Emma got a call from the Nashville firm they'd secured additional funding, enough to rebuild and expand the solar farm. The news spread, and for the first time Willow Creek felt like it might heal. But as Emma and Lily celebrated quietly at the diner, a brick crashed through the window, glass shattering around them. A note was tied to it. "Leave or else." Emma stared at the shattered glass, her pulse racing as Lily clutched her hand. The note's threat hung heavy, but Emma's resolve hardened. She wasn't the scared teenager who'd fled Willow Creek. She was a woman who'd built a life, a love, a purpose, and she wouldn't let hate win. The police took the brick and note, but their investigation was half-hearted. Emma didn't wait for justice. She called a town meeting, her voice steady as she held up the note. "This is what fear looks like," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "But I'm not afraid. Are you?" The room was silent. Then Reverend Claire stood, her voice ringing out. "Enough. This town is better than this." Applause followed, tentative at first, then stronger. Emma and Lily worked tirelessly to rebuild. The solar farm rose from the ashes, its panels gleaming under the Tennessee sun. Workers, many trained by Emma's programs, hammered and welded, their faces lit with purpose. Doris organized a fundraiser at the diner, raising enough to cover the remaining costs. Even Mrs. Carter donated, her eyes soft with something like pride. Sarah was a constant presence, her strength growing as she saw the town rally. One evening she pulled Emma aside. "Dad wants to see you," she said, her voice quiet. Emma hesitated, but she went. Robert was frail, his eyes cloudy but focused. "I was wrong," he said again, his voice barely a whisper. I'm proud of you." The words broke something in Emma, and she cried, not for the father who'd hurt her, but for the man who was finally trying to understand. The solar farm's opening day was a celebration. The mill site, once a graveyard of dreams, was now a beacon of hope. Residents gathered, their faces a mix of awe and gratitude. Emma stood with Lily and Sarah, her heart full as Mayor Tom cut the ribbon. "This is for all of us," Emma said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "For every kid who's ever felt like they didn't belong." The ceremony was interrupted by a commotion. Hank and his group, shouting slurs and waving signs. But this time the town didn't stay silent. Joe stepped forward, his voice booming. "You don't speak for us, Hank." Others joined, forming a human wall between the protesters and the celebration. Hank's group backed down, their voices drowned out by cheers. That night, Emma and Lily stood by the creek, the willow tree swaying in the breeze. "We did it," Lily said, her arms around Emma. "You did it." Emma shook her head, her eyes shining. "We did. You, me, Sarah, this town." They kissed, the world fading to just the two of them, their love a light that no darkness could extinguish. Months later, Willow Creek was thriving. The solar farm created jobs, lowered energy costs, and drew new businesses. Emma and Lily decided to stay, buying a small house on Maple Street. Sarah moved in with them, her laughter filling the space where pain once lived. Robert passed quietly, his final days marked by small gestures of reconciliation. A photo of Emma as a child on his nightstand, a letter of apology she found after he was gone. At the town's annual fair, Emma was honored with a plaque for her work. As she accepted it, she looked out at the crowd: Doris, Joe, Reverend Claire, Mrs. Carter, and so many others who'd once turned away. "This isn't my victory," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's ours. We chose love over hate, hope over fear." She pulled Lily onto the stage, their hands clasped, and the crowd cheered, a sound that echoed through the heart of Willow Creek. As they walked home under the stars, Emma felt a peace she'd never known. She'd come back to save her sister, but in the end, she'd saved herself and a town that had once cast her out. Lily squeezed her hand, her smile brighter than the moon. "You changed everything," she said. Emma smiled back, her heart full. "No, Lil. We did." Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.